Welcome to Managing Love Intelligently. I'm Jason.
And I'm Stephen Ian, marriage and family therapist.
And today's episode is titled Updating Your Relationship Menu.
So I don't even know what that means.
I'll let you know. I'll tell you what it means. So the reason why I decided to do a episode on this is because it's something that I've heard both you and Sharon, maybe Sharon says it more than you, about how people don't know what's on the menu of life. And then as far as like relationships go, people don't really know what is available. So for me, my menu when I was younger consisted of marriage did not look good. The menu had a lot of items on there that I was not interested in eating. For instance, there was.
You're not meaning that in a sexual way.
Well, sometimes there was no sex, so sometimes the kitchen ran out of food.
Okay,
so that happened in most marriages. As far as like from my observations go, like people weren't having sex, the affection kind of dies. There is kids, and that kind of has a whole host of problems that then add to the complications of marriage. There's ups and downs to marriage. It's challenging. It's really difficult. It's kind of like that was the idea. There's fights that happen sometimes, and it just gets really boring with the same person. You get really tired of seeing the same person over and over again. And that kind of then creates this like hatred for them or some like disgust with them in some way. So that's kind of how the menu of marriage and relationships kind of came to me. And that's how
it's so bleak.
Yeah.
Jeez, I'm surprised you even like.
That's why I'm not married. I'm 40 years old and I'm not married because that's kind of when I really look at it, that's how I viewed marriages. And that was from observing things. And my friends who did get married got divorced because they had a lot of the problems that I kind of discussed. And it was kind of a menu of that I wasn't really interested in, which is why, again, I'm 40 now and single. But now that I've gotten more insights to it, as far as relationships go and what is possible, I'm more open to the idea, or I am open to the idea that of one day actually getting married, if that actually happens to me. But I think that, kind of this podcast to talk about that whole relationship menu and how maybe the ideas that you have about it can be upgraded to something that is actually enjoyable.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about. I do talk about this with Sharon, and for those listening for the first time, Sharon is my wife. And it's a little bit like the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein talking about language, and when he says that if we don't have the words to describe a thing, we cannot understand that thing. And I think that if you don't know what's available potentially, it's really hard to make a move toward those things you don't have or you've never experienced. I think about my poor immediate ancestors. My mother grew up in a family where her father was a career criminal and very violent and very frightening, right? And so, and grew up at a very impressionable age, 12 and 13 through the Depression. So for her, life was what it was, and she had a very limited agenda in terms of what she was trying to achieve. And from those young years, it was, I don't want to be poor again. I don't want to be hungry again, that kind of thing. And of course, none of us want those things, but it never occurred to her that she might also add to the list, and I'd like to have an abuse-free relationship. So that wasn't on her list, and what a surprise. She ends up marrying my father, who was also, like her own father, a career criminal and very violent and very frightening. And so it never occurred to her that she could put that on her to-do list. Make sure you interview prospective candidates for their values or their beliefs on equality and abuse-free living, because there wasn't the language available to her. And quite understandably, she passed along her lack of knowledge to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I approached life as a young man, getting married for the first time at 20, with the same deficits. And it wasn't until many years later that I kind of reasoned it out and realized, no, I could have done something different. I could have actually constructed a life that was based on gender equality between myself and my partner. I could have done something that was much more like an abuse-free relationship, where there was not only an absence of physical abuse, but complete freedom from emotional abuse or verbal abuse. And it just never occurred to me that what partnership really was. In fact, and there's an idea that I think I was only taught by America's gay community, because marriage being outlawed for people in the gay community, for me, listening to them talk about partners, that word really resonated with me, because it seemed to embody equality and also a real side-by-side sort of working on life's challenges together.
Mm-hmm.
So, I hear this language, and I started talking and dreaming and conceptualizing. And for me, just realizing that life can be vastly more wonderful than any of us could ever have dreamed. When my first marriage failed, here's a funny story. I was so used to being lonely in that marriage and to not doing anything, because my former wife didn't really enjoy me. She didn't love me. She didn't enjoy the pleasure of my company. And no matter what it is I might have suggested that we go do together, the answer was always, no, thank you. Mm-hmm. And I realized, well, I like backpacking. I need a wife who loves backpacking. Mm-hmm. And it's hysterical in hindsight to look back and see, when I was interviewing my next prospect, who happens to be my current wife.
And your first wife didn't like backpacking either, but you...
I don't know what she liked.
She wouldn't do anything.
Yeah, right. She didn't want to. If it involved me, even something as simple as a walk, mm-hmm. or just going shopping, she just didn't want to do it with me. And yet I stayed, because I was still not willing to give up in the face of the obvious evidence that this is not the woman for me.
Yeah,
that's another item on the menu for me. Actually, is I want and I need to be with a partner who's crazy about me, who really loves being the president of my fan club, just as I love being the kind of man who's so in love with my wife that she has me, I freely admit, she has me wrapped around her little finger, and she can have whatever she wants. I don't care. I'm gonna make sure she gets it. So it never occurred to me that I could be the beneficiary of an extravagant love on the part of the other person, and that this love could be unashamed, over the top, wildly enthusiastic, and that, oh, I rather like that. I'm capable of giving that, but it never occurred to me that the world of women was going to give that to me in return. Mm-hmm. And it was only when I could conceive of the idea and talk about the idea that it got in my mind in terms of a working part of my vocabulary. And then it became part of my search criteria. And, oh, sure enough, there are these amazing women. Another one. I got another example for you. I'm so excited talking about this now that I know what you meant, was I had this irrational belief that it was my job as a man to take care of the women in my life. Mm-hmm. And I got that belief from my family at a very early age, but it was solidified when my father was the target of a police homicide. And when he died, my mother was just grief-stricken, and I was like 2 inches taller than she was at the time. And I was prompted to go take care of her by other adults. And it was in that moment I became the little man of the house, and I felt like I naturally slid into that position, but it became the default position for all of my relationships with women, I was going to take care of them. Unfortunately, that always required me to look for women who were kind of messed up, who were overly shy or somehow stuck in their lives, because I knew I had a job and I knew what to do to help them. And unfortunately, it was an extremely flawed paradigm for ever having the kind of adult relationship I was longing for, because it always resulted in my being if you could think of the relationship construct between an adult father taking care of his young children, it was always more like that. So instead of getting into a relationship, I would execute an adoption. And that is a horrible formula for starting a real partnership. So, I got exactly what I set out to build, and it turned out I didn't like what I built. But it didn't occur to me until many years later that women unbelievably could be not only as competent as a man, but even more competent than I in a variety of areas of life. And to have met such a woman in the person of my wife was a revelation. I just remember just the joy I felt when I realized, oh my gosh, she's like such an amazing adult. She's so incredible. And because and there are all kinds of examples of that, and I could give examples, but she was just this very self-sufficient adult who was looking for a partner, but she didn't need a partner to have a life worth living or to have a life worth sharing. She just was interested in me because she liked me for the pleasure of my company. It's a very different paradigm. And wow, how amazing it was to experience that. So the list goes on and on, in terms of, but we're limited by our backgrounds, our family upbringing. We're limited by our own thoughts and lack of experience with life. And this is why I want to encourage young people to consider dating a lot, at least 30 people before you settle down with anybody. A lot of those dates, of course, will be, one-offs where you date, but you absolutely don't want to see them again. But I think what the thinking person will discover is that as you date, you'll notice a pattern that you tend to pick people of a certain type. And then to ask yourself, well, do I like that type? Do I like what I'm getting? Is this going to work out well for me? Does this have the potential for a truly happy conclusion in terms of a life partnership? And then when we do that, we usually tend to upgrade. We go, well, I guess it was nice to date her and to have sex and be in love and all that, but I think I want a woman who doesn't drink so much, or I think I'd like to have a partner who's more educated, or I think I'd like to have a partner who's more focused on, what we could do together as a partnership. And whatever it is, you can't do that. You can't do all that learning in 1 year, and you can't do it all in one relationship. It's like going to the grocery store and never doing any comparison shopping. You never read consumer reports whenever you buy a new thing. But to do the same thing with romance. And I know I'm talking without giving you a break to get in on this conversation, but I just think my own journey has taught me so much about that. And then once your standard has risen, once you realize, oh no, there are women who are capable of having an abuse-free relationship, and not only being interested in it, but committing to it and keeping that commitment. It's like, well, you'd never go back. Why would we ever go back to a partner who's abusive? That's just, or a person who withholds love or who's incapable of loving us as we really are. It just makes no sense.
Yeah. So some of the things about like what could be on the menu, one would be with a partner who's crazy about you.
Oh, yeah.
Another one would be abuse-free, someone who could commit to an abuse-free life. Someone who believes in equality.
Oh, you were listening.
Yeah.
Did you write this stuff
I wrote
down?
notes.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh. Okay.
I have a magnificent memory. No. And somebody who also likes you for the pleasure of your company.
Yeah, who really enjoys me.
Yeah.
And to that list, as long as you're making a list, whether it's for yourself or someone else, I think for me as a man, this is going to sound crazy maybe to other people, but I just always, my mother was a very kind person, and I irrationally believed all women were kind.
Mm.
And I was shocked, I tell you, to find out that no, there are a lot of unkind women out there.
Send your emails to stevening.com.
And I realized, oh, I needed to add that to my list. That's on the menu of life. I need to look for a kind one. And so, this isn't just a rubric of items I'm looking for, but it's really more like, it's more like consciousness expanding to realize the universe is infinitely rich and the human race is infinitely diverse, and that I can probably dare to dream and hope. But even if I do that without experience, I'm going to find potential partners are much more wonderful than I ever could have imagined.
Yeah. Would you say that? So like, that's why I really like this, because we're essentially building a new menu. So do you think people could kind of create their own menus of like what they are thinking a relationship is now or what a marriage is now? And then, because like I gave you mine
from your failed,
from my just my ideas of like what my menu was. It was pretty negative.
I think mine was actually it's the same as yours.
Oh, okay.
If she's pretty and she's willing to be seen with me in public, I know you agreed.
Yeah,
that was part of your early search criteria. And it's like, yeah, what else do I need?
Yeah,
because I'm just looking for a girlfriend. And now I would never advise somebody to look for a girlfriend. I would suggest considering looking for the right girlfriend, or looking for the right boyfriend, looking for the right partner. And I think that that's a more intriguing question.
Yeah. Well, even though I'm saying like how you think about relationships, or what are some of the tropes, what are some things that maybe in relationships that you believe are universal? Like for me, I was saying there's ups and downs, there's highs and lows, there's going to be intense conflicts, there's going to be droughts of sex, no sex, there's going to be times where you're just bored out of your mind with this person, there's going to be bickering going on.
Yeah,
it's like all the stuff that like those irrational beliefs, I guess, well, those would be irrational beliefs, right?
I would say there was one irrational belief, and that was normalizing dissatisfaction. That profound dissatisfaction is a normal part of life. And after all, this is as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's funny now, we look back on it, but that's actually how we thought.
Well, yeah,
this is normal. This is part of life,
and that goes on. That's kind of the way that it is. But to know that you can have, so it's like I think just knowing, like for the listeners, like becoming aware of this stuff, I think is for me was helpful to become aware of like, okay, what do I think about relationships or marriage? And it's like, oh, it's kind of grim.
Yeah, even the notion that you can. Because for me, the notion is one of intentionality, that I can intentionally build something that I really want, and that I just need to find the right partner. In the sense is like interviewing prospects for a job. And I get, because for me, again, irrationally, I guess I thought my brain keeps interrupting me, but because I fell in love relatively easy, and which I think is still a strength, that I can see what is lovable about a wide variety of humans, I irrationally concluded that, well, if you're in love, then you should be together. And in terms of the intentional lifestyle or the intentional interview, it really never occurred to me that there was more to it than that, that just simply being in love wasn't such a rare thing after all, that people fall in love all the time. And I've proven to myself repeatedly, I can fall in love with women who are absolutely wrong for me, for a variety of reasons. So it's sort of it's a necessary condition for a successful relationship, love that is, but it's not adequate. it's insufficient.
Yeah.
So love is important, yes, but that's sort of the child's play part of that, because even as a very young teenager and even as a boy, I was able to fall in love to the degree that I was mature enough for my developmental stage. I was falling in love with girls in grade school. I wasn't falling in love with them from 7th to 12th grade. So falling in love is truly easy. But the stuff we're talking about is more like relationship technology. And that is important to figure out, because otherwise you're limited to the technology of your family of origin.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like being limited to any other kind of tech. If your family, for example, never taught you how to build a fire, then you got to start all over and learn how to build fires, and you've got to do all these other things and create a good wheel before you get to ride in a car. I think that there's so much hope for us if we can find mentors and guides who actually can teach us something worth knowing. And this is one reason why I like to do these podcasts, because my own experience with looking at self-help books, it's like, all I need to remember are these 45 steps, and then I too can have a good relationship.
Yeah.
Or, I need to read these tea leaves and do it successfully this many times before it's going to work out. And I don't think it is nearly as hard. I think it's more complicated than what I thought when I was a teenager, but I don't think it's, we're a social species, and we really should be very good at this. And you already probably know this, but you know how really your own thoughts about marriage left you rather uninspired and unmotivated. And we're seeing the marriage rate crash around us in this country. And I think it's because we don't have the compelling need to get married, so that we have somebody economically to literally pull the plow, in case the mule dies on our farm.
Yeah.
We don't literally need a man around the house to earn a living so that she can raise the children at home. Men and women are both capable of earning a living. They're both capable of having a life and buying their own dwelling and going forward in very significant ways. But I would argue that partnership and forming that strategic alliance to face life's challenges together by pooling our resources and our abilities is still a magical experience for those of us who've experienced it and those of us who have yet to experience it. Once you've had this, I think
that's if the menu is good, though.
Yeah, once you crack the code on that. And unfortunately, we don't really have holistic sex education that teaches young people about relationships. Yes, we're all forced to learn it from scratch, or to die miserably in the wrong relationships with the wrong people, or utterly alone when we'd rather be with somebody. And I think it's unfortunate, but yeah, those, that whole business of normalizing the banal, normalizing the mediocre, normalizing intense and long periods of dissatisfaction, because if you do and you're a good boy, you'll get a cookie at the end. Yes, you didn't have sex this month, but maybe next month. Or, nobody expressed any love to you this year, but for sure on your anniversary, you're going to experience something romantic. I think having standards that are that low really do a disservice to all of us.
And do you think that a lot of people have those low standards?
Yeah, nearly universally. It's not just you. It wasn't just you and me. It was like lots and lots of people, just normalize the idea. Look at look around you and see how many married people are in marriages you really want to have. One girlfriend told me her last boyfriend before me said, "I'll get married as soon as you point out a marriage I'd like to be in." And she never could. with that in mind, as she looked around, it's like, well, really, nobody's particularly happy.
Yeah.
Now, I've had the pleasure of meeting many people who are happy, and I had a couple
in marriage.
Yeah, I've met a number of wonderful people who are deliriously happy, and it's not because they're so wealthy, and it's not because everything is easy, and it's really because they somehow cracked the code on finding somebody who is extravagantly in love with them, who has no hesitation expressing it, and who actually enjoys the pleasure of their company. And the two of them are going forward in their lives, building a life that they find to be beautiful. Wow. Well, who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
Sounds pretty good even to me. And I have that. So I think that, most people don't have that for sure.
Yeah. Do you think people but they could strive to that? And do you think that they could kind of create a menu of their own as far as like, could they, for an exercise, like do a wish list of things that they want and try to like obtain these things? Or?
Well, yeah, usually what we do is we err on this other side with my dream partner, and he or she will be physically this way. They will be this way. They'll be this way. They'll be this way. And it's really not, I don't think it's a terribly helpful way to go, because life has a way of surprising us with wonder and joy because people can exceed our imaginations.
Yeah.
But to be able to at least have a bedrock foundation of, well, I want to be with somebody who's mindful. I'd like to be with somebody who's not abusive. Well, in fact, yeah, I'm not going to be with somebody who fails in that category. And I really need to be. But you got to date a lot, because it's those failures in relationships that teach you what you need. So you date somebody who looks amazing, and they are amazing, great piece of arm candy. You love being seen with them, except they can't hold a conversation, or they really have nothing to say.
Yeah.
Or they don't know how to share, or, and there's just so many things. And the list is actually way too long to build any kind of algorithm that would guide somebody meaningfully. I think it's because we're each so different from one another. There's so much diversity that I can tell you, for my former wife, there were aspects of my being that she found ultimately not only disappointing, but deeply disappointing and even repulsive. And those same aspects of my being are treasured and valued by my wife. And so we all really need to find out who we are, what we really need, and then to find out those people, the kinds of people who actually can enjoy us.
Yeah.
And that's not automatic.
How important is like attraction to you then? Like, I know it's not like you don't want to make a menu that says hot, she's hot, has lots of sex, and cooks me dinner. Like that wouldn't be like,
no, that wouldn't really be on my menu.
Wouldn't be on your menu. But,
because there could be a sleeper, right? Who's the woman you've been working side by side with for the last year, and you always thought she was nice, but you never really noticed her. And then one day you realize, oh my God, I've been like standing right next to the perfect person for this last year, and I'm only now realizing it. And that happens throughout life, right?
Yeah.
Writers who go undiscovered for their whole lives and then are discovered in obscurity, and their works go on to be amazingly successful. Same thing with musicians. And it's the same way with love. I think with love, there are just those diamonds in the rough, and they're not really in the rough. It's just that we're not aware and looking around us.
But attraction though is a thing that has to be there.
No, you can do it purely cerebrally, and it just makes sense that we should be together, Susan. No, of course, because I'm an emotional being as well as an intellectual being, and I'm a sexual being as well as all the others. And so, yeah, I have to have that animal attraction, what we call animal magnetism from 150 years ago.
And how do you even explain that? That's just like
well,
is that
when a man loves a woman,
But it's kind of random sometimes. You don't know when it comes up.
It's totally
and sometimes
unexpected.
it's like, sometimes someone could be perfectly pretty and maybe you don't find them. You don't have that pool. Have you ever had stuff like that?
Oh, sure. For the very young who are listening to this, there are going to be people who are crazy about us, but we don't return the sentiment, and vice versa. People we're going to find incredibly attractive and they just find us practically invisible. And there are also people where it's mutual, but that's really, kind of, there's just animal attraction.
Yeah, and there's nothing else.
There's nothing else.
Yeah.
And so you have sex with her and then you go back home to your wife.
Damn, the jokes.
No, I think you enjoy whatever it is to enjoy, but then when the dawning realization comes that, oh yeah, we never talk, or I'm embarrassed to introduce her to my friends, or gee, I could never imagine actually making a life with this person.
Yeah. That's where the menu could then become that thing that I was talking about earlier with the boredom and things like that. And
right.
So you can't have just straight on attraction, but you have to have that attraction, but then it has to go deeper than that as well.
Yeah, I think absolutely. So, but without the attraction, I have clients over the years who they're so bright and everything. And again, far brighter than I, but they often are guilty of poo-pooing what they don't know and what they don't understand. And the truth is, if I'm not attracted, and if there's not some sort of feeling of love, then it's just not going to work. Why? Well, because not all of life is based on a cognitive foundation. It's you can't reduce everything to a logical algorithm.
You heard Stephen Ng say this. So
well, sometimes when I don't comprehend her, for example, but I don't know why she's saying what she's saying or what she's getting at, but I still can't keep my hands off her, and I still want to hold her and kiss her or comfort her, or, it's not just sex. It's that there's an abiding love that exists, even if she's doing something that I find in the moment to be disappointing or annoying or irritating. I still have an abiding love. And what those emotions are, listening audience, your emotions aren't just emotions. They are the bottom line message your brain is sending you about a very complicated set of facts that are really important. So yes, feelings matter. When you're unhappy with someone, I mean consistently, not in the moment, but just consistently, your brain is telling you that there are a lot of things here that just don't work. And so for you to ignore your feelings is to ignore this vast and very complicated algorithm that your brain is trying to communicate to you in one word, unhappy. You're unhappy, dude. She's a great woman. I get it, but you're unhappy with her. So it's time to leave.
Yeah.
Or time to step up and confront her. And it's the same way with all the other feelings. If I don't have an abiding sense of love for somebody, really, what's the point of our being together? Because all motivation ultimately is emotional.
Yeah.
Even the greedy robber barons of the Republican Party, who I'm talking to, you venture capitalists. So those guys are motivated by the emotion of greed, and they want what they want. All of our human motivations start with feelings. Feelings are not to be looked down upon. They are to be embraced and to be used as our guiding light through our life. There's a woman out there who would probably make perfect sense on paper for you, for example. But then you meet her and she's pretty perfect. It's just this one thing, the touch of her hand makes your flesh crawl.
Yeah.
Wow, that's not going to work.
Not going to work. No.
But otherwise, she's perfect.
But some people will be like, well, that's just, again, going back to the menu thing, it's like some people could be like, well, that's just a part of it. They're not going to like everything.
You got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah, take the good with the bad. And that's not
Yeah, but except that, marriage and romance and forming a life with someone is an elective procedure. It's not required. So why would one elect? It'd be like somebody like, your plastic surgeon saying, well, yes, we can give you a nose job, but you have a 75% chance of dying in the surgery.
Yeah.
It's like, who wants that? I mean, geez, I'll live with the nose I've got. Thank you very much. So the risk to reward ratio of being, well, this is as good as it's going to get, I guess, of being unhappy and miserable in a relationship, life goes on too long for that.
But can't people say, well, then you're being too picky?
People can say so many things that are unhelpful. But in terms of being picky, it's like it's a little bit like let's take one example. If I really want to have an abuse-free relationship, I would like my partner, when we're home together, when we're in each other's company, to never put me down, to never call me names, much less physically abuse me. And I'm willing to offer that in return. That's the kind of relationship I want. Well, yeah, she loses her temper sometimes, but you're being too picky if you think people can be abuse-free all the time. Well, that's somebody who really doesn't understand what's on the menu.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people who bring an abuse-free relationship to the negotiation. They do have that to offer. So, or for the woman who isn't crazy about you, Jason, she might say, well, nobody's going to be crazy about somebody all the time. Well, actually, there are a lot of women who could be crazy about you all the time. Just as you have that kind of love to give, there are women out there who also have that. So if that's an important thing to you, I think that would matter. And I think in relationships based on equality, which is really the only kind of relationship worth having, that is important. Because it's the alternative is what? I construct the perfect Frankenstein woman, and I have this woman because she's really good at birthing babies, and I have that woman in my life because she's really passionate and she's still got her figure. And I have this woman in my life because she's so smart and really, helps me make a lot of money. And I have this woman over here because she's good in public appearances. And so no, that's crazy. Who wants to live like that?
Well, you get all those women. But
well, and in the end, you get none of them.
Oh, ooh.
Yeah. I mean, that's really what it is, because you really have no meaningful connection with any of them.
Even if you talk once a week. I mean, because.
Yeah. Or even if, the intellectual one is someone you talk to every day, and you plan and do all these other things, but it's not an integrated relationship, integrated in the sense that I'm able to experience physical expressions of love from her. I'm able to have pleasure with her in terms of recreation and enjoying entertainment. She's just, if that's all she is, and if that's all we are together, it's very two-dimensional rather than the three-dimensional relationship I think most of us are looking for once we realize that's on the menu.
So you see a lot of relationships as a therapist, obviously, throughout the years. And most of them, I would imagine, don't know what's on the menu.
Yeah, I think so. And often in a therapy session, a therapist, not just me, but a therapist will say something like, well, would you two be open to the idea of, and then the therapist inserts a new menu item.
Okay.
And would you be open to the idea of having a family life where there was no abuse, or having a family life where everybody shared the workload equally, or a family life where you could be happy and fulfilled?
What? It's not real. He's not speaking.
Yeah, some
stuff.
people look at you like you're talking in Martian all of a sudden. But if the therapist sets it up properly, as and can present the goal as an achievable one, and well, that's ridiculous. Nobody lives like that. Well, I think that then it's truly attainable for an individual. I don't know that it's always attainable for the couple. Yeah. Because some of us just made a huge mistake when we got together with the wrong person.
Is that a lot of times stemming from, like we were talking about earlier, like just family life, like how you were raised, and also maybe things that happened in your childhood.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the failure to educate the young in terms of relationships, what I would say is a true sex education that would include how to interview marital prospects, but it is also true that people lie and they say that they are one thing when they're not, and we fail in our due diligence to really check to see if that's true. And then there are other people, you get into a marriage and you go to marriage counseling because of problems, and it turns out that the term in therapy is secondary gains. Well, yes, she wants to have an abuse-free relationship, she tells her husband, Jason. But then in therapy, it's discovered, but she gets a lot of power from being able to pull that abuse card once in a while and yell at you or put you down.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's not egregious or it's not chronic, it's only intermittent, but it's still miserable for you because you never know when it's coming. And you would like to have a perfectly abuse-free relationship. And instead, the other person, keeps that card. Or the person who, rather than stepping up to become a true partner, and even though they could, maybe they just get so many secondary gains out of being helpless and incompetent in terms of everyday activities that for them, they just love the attention, or they feel loved only when this sort of behavior occurs. And so they are never going to be the true partner you're looking for.
Yeah. And so then what do you believe like marriage and relationships can be like, as far as the optimal way that they are achieved, that is achievable? Like humans can't achieve relationships and marriage to this degree. Like what is that? Like what is your idealized? What does that look like? Like if you're ideal, I know we talked about some of the things that would be on the menu, but like this is something that could actually happen for people.
Well, we're all so different, right? And a lot of different marriages work for different people. But at the end of the day, I think what we are all looking for is a home life and a relationship where I feel respected, I feel valued, I feel loved, and I am happy. And if I am not valued and respected and adored to the point where I'm happy all the time, there's a problem. Now, the problem could be, maybe it's just me. I just don't have the capacity right now to be truly happy because I'm afraid of letting go of control. And that's my issue. And I need to go to get some therapy for that. Sometimes we only find that out when we're in one of those truly perfect relationships. I've had many individuals, men and women, come to me complaining they're on their third or fourth or fifth marriage, and they have such bitter regret over letting go of the first one because their first partner, to whom they were married for X number of years, was truly everything they'd ever been looking for. And instead, they dropped them and moved on to somebody else because he or she was somehow superior in some way, superficially or even genuinely. But then they realized, but the balance wasn't there, and I'm really not as happy as I was. So, this whole venture of finding a life partner is fraught with danger and the risk of failure. However, we have developed a strategy that is the remedy for all that failure, and it's called divorce. And so it starts with the acceptance that, oops, I made a really big mistake. You confront your partner, you confirm your perceptions, and they say, no, this is as good as it gets. Like it or lump it, mister. And then it's time to part, if you can, with equanimity on the part of each person. And not everybody can do that. A lot of times there's a lot of drama, the needless escalation of a problem. And with, because divorce doesn't have to be miserable. It can be something where both people can accept that, we just both made a mistake and we thought we were building this, but we got that. And my bad. Let's just start over. They can etch a sketch to the whole relationship and start over. And so we can do that, but it's if you're not everybody listening to this, I just really hope for you that you can either be currently enjoying or hold fast to a faith that if you're going to be in a relationship, that you're going to be valued, you're going to be respected, you're going to be truly loved, and you're going to be very happy. Because if you're not getting that, then you're really setting yourself up for a pretty miserable life.
And what about people, though, who say, well, you're talking a pipe dream with this happiness thing? Like, you can't be happy all the time.
Yeah, I have people who say that to me, yeah.
And what do you tell them? Because it's like, well, people aren't happy all the time, Steve. It's like, and not, it's like.
I'm happy all the time. And
Liar, he's lying.
Well, and for me, it's not being giddy as a schoolgirl every moment of every day. But because I'm not giddy, I'm actually kind of a recovering control freak. But I have an abiding, enduring sense of happiness within me that is present whenever I check in on my heart. And that doesn't mean I don't have tragedy occur. People and pets I love die or get injured. And there are horrible things that happen in this world. And I think about some of the things going on in foreign affairs today around the world in terms of geopolitics that are just, I think, truly drama in their own right. They're on an epic scale of a needless escalation of a problem because citizens of every country on the earth want to be valued and want to be happy and to be loved and have enough food to eat. And really, we need another war? We really don't. But on a personal level, those people who, I think usually what I hear is, well, you can't be happy all the time, is usually betrays a certain amount of anger, which is an indicator of fear. And the fear is that they might be wrong and that their life is really not what it should be. And that is correct. And the remedy is facing your fears and accepting that I'm not as happy as I wish I were, and then making some changes so you can get there.
And even with you do have that other stuff, your heart's happy, you check in with yourself, you do have the happiness, all that other stuff kind of happens around you with the world or foreign affairs and tragedy that happens in your life. And then you feel those emotions fully, but you still kind of center back to some happiness or gratitude kind of.
I know this is confusing for a lot of people, but I think Kamala Harris could be both East Indian and Black at the same time. So I can have both happiness that is abiding in my heart, and at the same time have enormous compassion for the suffering of someone sitting in front of me who's having a terrible experience. So I can have both. And I presume at some point in my life, I'm going to have a doctor tell me, well, sorry, Steve, it's stage 4 and you've got another couple of weeks at best. And no, I'm not going to be happy to find out that I'm dying, but I am going to be really happy to have lived the life that I have. I'm going to be very grateful for what I've experienced, and even grateful, I believe, in the time of my passing for whatever spiritual insights and love I experienced through that time.
Well, there you have it. He cannot be broken, people.
Well, it's not just me. It's also, people for thousands of years have figured this out. Like Marcus Aurelius, if you read his meditations, and he wasn't the only one. He's one of many who figured out, many people can control the outside of me. I could get shot or stabbed. I could have a terrible disease or lose a limb, but no one can control my mind.
Yeah.
And so I can really be full of gratitude for my time and what I'm experiencing in this life. And I've watched people go to death with dignity and courage, really having a sense of powerful equanimity where they were just really okay with life. And it's okay that they're going, and they're all right with all of that and leaving the rest of us behind. So I want to be more like them, and I want to live like them. And so I've got the first part, got the happiness down.
Yeah.
And the second part is facing death with equanimity. And I'm confident that if you live a life that's chronically happy, it's going to be a lot easier to face death.
Yeah.
Than the person who's been just aching with misery. And the difference there, I know I'm rattling on, but if we have time, I just getting to the point where I have my feelings instead of my feelings having me, and realizing that just because I'm sad doesn't mean that I'm pathologically depressed. And I can have these feelings, and they can show me the way, and they can indicate I need to make a change in my life. If you don't like going to craft fairs, and I'm sorry for those people who love craft fairs, because I know that that's a legitimate interest, just like bird watching, which is something I love. But if you don't like doing something, you don't have to keep doing it. And if you don't like your relationship, you don't have to keep doing it. So I'm hoping everybody starts using emotions as a bit of a guide. And that's compatible with Stoicism, just like Kamala can be Indian and Black. At the same time, I can let my emotions guide me and be both emotionally led and stoic.
Great. So we'll wrap up there. Thank you for that. And to end, we have a listener question. And if you have a question for Steve, you could visit stephening.com and fill out the contact form. This week's question is to Stephen Ing. I am a 29-year-old female, and for almost a year now, the guy in my life and I agree that we aren't dating and that we are best friends with benefits. But we spend all of our time together, and it sure feels like we are dating. But without the official relationship status, I am not seeing anyone else, and I am pretty sure he isn't either. How do I get him to realize we should be together without actually telling him? I'm worried that it would scare him off.
Yeah, I'm curious, and I'm sorry to answer a question with a question. It sounds like she's having an absolutely wonderful relationship. And so why would one want to fix that? And I think sometimes we get confused and think it's all about the closing. Like in the movie Glengarry Glen Ross. Yeah. Always be closing. And I think that, and you should look up that video on YouTube to watch that scene. It's a masterclass in acting and drama writing. But if you're having a great friendship with benefits, and you're truly feeling loved and happy, then maybe the language that's being used isn't particularly accurate. Because I wouldn't say that is a friendship. I would say, no, that's a lot more than a friendship, because you're enamored of this person. You do have love for them, and you're having sex with them. And friends don't really, I know so many people are going to disagree with me on this, but the essence of friendship is a platonic love, free of the animal passions. So if you're loving it and you can't even imagine a better relationship and you're perfectly satisfied, I would encourage the 29-year-old young woman to continue doing what she's doing. It seems to be working for her. And then the question is, about her future. What is she building? And she might want to take a look at something creative, like if she's concerned about her financial future, to start talking about insurance policies and IRAs, and what are we doing in terms of what happens if we get pregnant. And but it doesn't have to be a partnership as defined by your parents. It can be a partnership you are free to define on your own terms. And maybe what you're having is actually working very well for you.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And I do agree with you about friendship now. I think you've changed my mind. I still have friends that are women that they're just in there. I can't not be friends with them unless.
But if they offered you sex, would you have sex with them?
Let's not get into this right now.
All right. All right.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Thanks as always. And yeah, hopefully that conversation on the relationship menu was helpful for you all. Update that menu. I know I have, and I'm definitely not going back to the old ways of viewing the way that I viewed relationships and marriage. And I just see that, again, like you said, respect, value, love, and happiness, like make those a priority, and good luck.
Yeah, we're not going back. That should be a political slogan.
We're not going back. Okay. All right. Thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you later.
Bye now.